Welcome to this Webit Impact Forum session on the biggest challenges facing the media. I'm Nina Goswami, and I'll be your moderator for the next 20 minutes or so. I'm the BBC's Creative Diversity Lead. And what I do is I run initiatives such as 50/50 The Equality Project, and it's all about looking at how we can increase representation on the media, not just at the BBC, but across the globe. I'm also a journalist, and I have the pleasure of being joined by Mike Federle, the Chief Executive of Forbes. The global media company has a monthly reach of 150 million across its platforms. And under Mike's watch, I understand, which started back in 2017, you've completed the digital transformation as well. And those efforts over the last 4 years have been the most successful in the media's organization's 104-year history. But before, Mike, I properly let you speak and let you loose, I just want to let our listeners and viewers know that they can join in the conversation on social media using the hashtag Webit. So Mike, as you probably know, the BBC, we're celebrating 100 years of broadcasting this year. So you picked us to the post by 4 years. But in all seriousness, what do you think is the real kind of success to longevity when you're a global media organization like Forbes?
Yeah, that's great. We're both old folks at this point. That's great. But Nina, thanks for having me here in Webit. I'm delighted to be part of the conference again. So glad to be here. And I think probably the thing you can point to most is our mission statement. We were started in 1917, and it's always been about trying to track those people who are doing interesting and innovative things and kind of making change in the world. And our mission statement has really stayed the same over that 104-year period. And that's to give people the knowledge, the resources, the inspiration, and the connections they need to achieve success. And I think that continuity of mission statement really has been one of the factors that has created this kind of long-term, the fact that we've been able to sustain our business for 104 years and still going strong with it. And
it gives you adaptability, doesn't it? I think it's something that will always kind of flex and change with society, your particular mission statement. And, it makes me think about, society today. As I say, part of my job is about reflecting society as it is today within our content. And, I think COVID's a real case in point for this. I was back in the BBC newsrooms, outputting and editing our kind of TV national bulletins, and we were having to change how we did things because of what would happen in society. Logistically, what the stories were to provide the information to society, and I'm sure that Forbes would have had to react to that as well. I mean, what was the challenges like for you across all your different platforms?
Yeah, so COVID was interesting, right? The whole world was forced into this great sociological experiment, right? Of how is society going to deal with this? How are things going to change around it? And a couple of things happened. One, I think we all realized that, boy, we can work very differently. We can work remotely, we can work in different ways. And that part of it, which was a bit scary at the beginning because of the unknown, quickly became, really interesting how adaptable everyone was to it. And it gets to necessity is the mother of invention. We all learned how to work in very different ways. But from a content editorial point of view, what we learned was how critically important information is during times like this. We saw our audience went through the roof in terms of number of people looking and checking in with Forbes several times a day over that period. And it wasn't only because they were home and had time, that was one factor, but it was also because the nature of the information, people started to go to really trusted sources like BBC and Forbes, and they wanted to know not only what was happening with the pandemic and COVID itself and how they should be dealing with it, but also about its effect on the economy as far as what we were covering, economy, on what's going to happen as we go through this quarantine period and kind of the separation period, quantitative easement and everything else that was going on at the time. So it pointed to the fact that information and news is more important than ever during that time, and trusted sources, which partly comes from 100-year or 104-year history. And again, as I was saying, that kind of continuity of what our mission is. I think really we came out of it feeling very gratified and satisfied with the importance of our platforms, and which encouraged us to look at new and different ways to communicate. So all in all, it was kind of an incredible period of recognizing the importance of journalism and what we do during crises like that.
Do you think that, we learned a great deal as well during that period. Do you think that it's helped change perhaps the media's future challenges in a way? One of the things that I think about is we ended up actually increasing the kind of voices that were in our content, because we'd remove barriers such as going into a studio if you're in TV or on radio. So we were able to reach a wider range of voices, and that now is, for us, as we return back to normality, so to speak, is a challenge that's returning. How do we keep those voices that we had met in these new voices that we got through COVID and brought them to our platform? How do we keep them as we move back to an old way of working, so to speak? Are there challenges that you're facing specifically at Forbes as you move forward?
Well, I don't want to move back to an old way of working. Very, very much. I'm very
I shouldn't
serious.
use that phrase of words. I'll probably get my wrist slapped.
No. I get into the conversation of remote work, or what I call distributed workforces, hybrid work, some in the office, some out of the office. And I have told the Forbes staff they can work from wherever they want, that we are fully distributed, which gives us opportunities to hire people all over the world and the country. And it's not confined to our company headquarters in New Jersey. And so that to me is a very powerful change, and is part of, as I said, the social experiment was foisted upon us back in March of 2020, or when the pandemic first began. But the experiment continues, and it's no longer necessarily about the pandemic. It's about what we learned and the changes that came out of it. And work is one of them, that there are new models for work and new ways to do things. And then also from a product point of view or content point of view, what we're doing right now, our ability to communicate with one another and connect with one another and share ideas with one another virtually and through video and live events, and that mixing of virtual and live. And we had a very big event business going into the pandemic that was probably the aspect of it was definitely the number one product that got affected by the pandemic, because instantly we had to cancel all the live events that we had and didn't know when they'd come back on. And it took several months before we were really able to ramp up a virtual alternative to it. And initially, people were very attracted to the virtual alternative, meaning people were tuning in, and to your point, it was much easier to get really interesting people from all over the world, because it was a lot more efficient than flying into a location and all of that. So that very much, we created some really impactful events. And you could argue some of the best agendas that we've ever had because of the willingness of people to participate in that way and the ease of use. And it took several months before marketers kind of realized like, oh, wow, this is very powerful. And this is a new way of doing it. And that, so then the sponsorships started to follow. And by the end of, by the end of 2020, we felt very good about a trajectory of where virtual events could go. And then in 21, eventually it started to move into this more hybrid phase of we could have smaller live events, but then project them out to much bigger audiences. And that's how we're conducting our business now is, these live events that have virtual elements to them. And so that I think was the most obvious one. But to your point as well, I mean, I think across the globe, it was easier to get people, whether on air or in a story, and access. And that too is one of those changes that's here. Is it's much easier working out of one place for me to be in Sofia, Bulgaria one moment and be in San Francisco the next moment.
Yeah, so right now you're in Sofia and the UK at the same time, right? So,
yeah, exactly.
I mean, one of the things you mentioned there is business, and Forbes ultimately is a business as much as an information provider. And under your leadership, the company has diversified its portfolio a lot. I wondered, for the uninitiated, could you tell us a bit more about the breadth of your business and why you felt that these kind of new lines were needed in the first place?
Yeah, no, absolutely. So when you think about Forbes, a lot of people think of us still as the magazine company, which we were for 100 years. And we now have three real buckets of business that I think of ourselves as a global media, branding, and technology company. And I say that because over the last 10 years, we've really done a very good job of digital transformation, where as we kind of brought the print business down and built up the digital business to a place where today we now have 150 million monthly uniques in our ecosystem. We crossed over the digital business in 2013, where digital was producing more revenues than print. Print's probably about 7% or so of our overall revenues now, which surprises a lot of people. But for us, the media business on one level has not really changed in the 100 years we've been around. It starts with you got to create great content that attracts an audience, which then you can monetize through either subscriptions or advertising or both. And so that model, we've always followed that. But as distribution methods have changed, we've stayed very much on top of that. So that today, we now have three major kind of buckets of business. One is the media business, which is the advertising business, which is primarily digital these days. Then we have branded businesses, which is where we either license or JV using the Forbes name. So we have, for instance, the Forbes School of Business and Technology with Arizona, University of Arizona's global campus, which is an online campus that gives full degrees in MBA programs. And that so that's a licensed business for us where we put our name to it. The Forbes name attached to a learning management system like they have really creates a very big business of scale. For them, it's about 18,000 students, a $230 million business. For us, it's an annual licensed business that's a good use of our brand. And then also, we have JVs where we will partner with people to build businesses. And for instance, we have Forbes Marketplace, which is a lead gen business and advisory business for what products to buy in financial products, whether credit cards or mortgages or insurance. So that's the middle bucket of branded and licensed businesses. And then the third bucket is our consumer businesses, which anything that's consumer facing for us, where now that we've built this audience of this 150 million, so a digital audience of scale, and the investments we've made in kind of the technology platforms that we have, we're now able to use data and analytics to really segment these audience cohorts and understand what they're looking for, how they interact with this site, how they engage, and how we can create deeper engagement by creating, bespoke products and content for them. So whether that's newsletters or a specific subject matter they're interested in, and that allows us to create these products that we can charge premium price for. And that's very much part of our strategy going forward, is to, now that we've built this big audience, is how do we serve them more better to deepen the engagement and also create new revenue lines. So those are the three pieces: media, branded, licensing, and consumer.
Yeah, the consumer one speaks to me very much so, because part of my passion is around, like, how do we engage with underrepresented audiences, and by understanding their digital footprints or what they're engaging in, then obviously we can reflect them better in the content that we're making. One of the things that we do on 50/50 is we started about increasing women's representation. And what we've seen, actually, since the BBC has increased women's representation across its platforms, that we've got more women consuming our content. So there's a real, your business case that you've just outlined is exactly something that we've seen as well. So it's really fascinating to see that parallel with what Forbes is doing and what we're doing here at the BBC.
I'm delighted you brought that up, and you should join us next year at an event I'm going to tell you about, because some people are surprised that currently our demographic mix, male to female, is more female than male. It's usually, it hovers right around 50-50, but it's slightly more female. And that's because that's a reflection of the world these days. There are more women in business than men. And if you look at the statistics, it's only going to continue that way and grow. And two of our really powerful platforms we've developed over the last decade is the 30 under 30, which is for entrepreneurs who are doing extraordinary things at an early age. And then the 50 over 50, which are women over 50 who kind of made their biggest mark at an older age, over 50, not as a young whippersnapper. And we brought the two of them together, though, where the over 50 mentoring the women of under 30 and in Abu Dhabi this year around International Women's Day. And it was really an incredible and very powerful event that we're committed to doing for 3 years there, and look forward to. And to your point, that's a kind of being in business journalism. You've got to reflect the reality of the audiences that you're addressing and the reality of the markets as they are these days, and society as it is these days. So anyway, thanks for bringing that up. That was good.
No, brilliant. Well, thank you. And, it is food for thought for us all. And for those who are listening to us on this particular conversation, you can get involved on social media using the hashtag Webit. We only have a couple of minutes left, Mike. So I'm going to quickly go back to what you've been doing in terms of digital transformation. I started by saying it's completed, but we've already discussed how society is continuously changing. So is technology, AI is moving forward, machine learning, blockchain technology, that's just a metaverse, just to name a few things. So I'm assuming these are challenges that are already part of your kind of thinking for Forbes in the future.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, again, part of our ability to sustain relevance over 100+ years has been, always be looking forward as to what's coming around the pike and what people need to know. And this gets back to the mission statement I mentioned as well. I mean, the basic thing that we do is to inform people and give them the knowledge of new innovations or new trends that are happening. And so with what I call under the catch-all of Web3, so whether it's crypto or NFTs or DAOs or metaverse, it's, these are all things that have been emerging and that we've been covering now for over a decade. I always love to tell this story. One of our early stories was a reporter in San Francisco who we wanted to see if she could live on Bitcoin for a week. This is back in 2012 when it was still very young, and quickly realized if she could live on pizza, she might be able to pull it off. But that was the only place she could actually transact in Bitcoin. So it didn't work, but all the Bitcoin that we bought for her at the time, several years later, when Bitcoin was up around 50, 60,000, she called us and said, hey, we still have that Bitcoin somewhere in the organization, but no one could find it. And of course, we lost the key and no one thought about a key at that point. And so somewhere out there is a lot of Bitcoin that we once owned and have not been able to recover. But with that, so from very early on, Forbes has been covering this emerging crypto. And if you look at it from a business perspective, the adoption of crypto almost runs parallel to the same way we saw the rise of the internet in the 90s. And it's on that J curve of, just really, it's here at this point, it's getting ready to do this rapid ascension. And so with that, Forbes is in an interesting place because we already address what I call the crypto committed, those people who are really deep into crypto. They're the big followers of all the crypto gods that are out there. And then you have this middle group, what I call the crypto curious, who are those people who are trying to get their arms around decentralized finance and what that means, and should I be invested in it, or how much attention should I pay to it? And then the third group, which is obviously the biggest group out there, is the crypto uninitiated, those people who either don't want to think about it, have no idea about it, or are still very skeptical about it. And we reach all three of those groups. And as a result, we've earned a pretty good reputation in the industry as a legitimate media company who is trying to explain and create information around this emerging market. And as such, that's part of the reason we attracted an investment from Binance, the world's largest cryptocurrency exchange, and both a financial investment that we look at very much as a strategic investment, as we look, meaning Forbes looks to expand its product offering and increase our content around Web3 and all the different aspects of that, and to work with them kind of on guidance as to the network that they already know and have built, as well as products and where we should be pointing some of our attention.
Right, so we'll watch the crypto Web3 space for Forbes, most definitely. Thank you so much, Mike, for your time today. Unfortunately, we are out of time. It's really been quite inspiring listening to your thoughts around, what's happened during COVID and also what we can expect in the future. So thank you very much. I'll be taking away, obviously, the fact that good content is the place to start, of course, for any media organization. And to our viewers and listeners, thank you very much for joining this conversation with Mike Federle, Chief Executive of Forbes. If you want to carry on the conversation, please do #Webit. And thank you for being part of the Webit Impact Forum 2022.